Hello, my name is Luke Turner, and welcome back to episode 11, episode 12, don't remember, of building a web app from scratch. Let's go ahead and kick off the session with the usual steps. We're going to run our database. We're going to run our client-side bundler. And then in a new terminal session, we're going to run the server-side. And once that's done running, we can open it in our browser. And sign in. Okie doke. Here we are. So today we're going to be continuing some work on the UI aspect of this. In particular, at the end of the last session, one of the things we did is we created two separate pages for exercise-specific information, you could say. One of them here is the edit page, the manage page for a given exercise, and then there's a historical data page for those exercises as well. And both of these, they're not styled at all. So I'm going to start with the editing page. And basically what I want to do here is just take this form and make it a bit more standard using Bulma components. And we're not going to do anything very fancy here because it's a pretty standard form page. Okay, so I believe that is the exercise layout here. One of the other things we can actually do with this is we can replace all of these divs with a for loop. But let's just start with the name, the first field. So I think we want this to be a horizontal field, and kind of to check my memory, because it has been a week, we defined this horizontal field mixin under this mixins file in Pug. And so we can reuse that in this form as well. So let's go ahead and do horizontal field exercise name, seems fine. And then beneath that, we're going to have a control, which we also have a mixin for. And then beneath that, we have the name. Let's see what that looks like now. Okie doke, looks okay, except this also needs the input class. Okay, so now we've got the name. And then these others, we're going to put all in probably one horizontal field, I think. All of the checkboxes aligned horizontally. So let's do another horizontal field. And we could call this parameters. When I'm building an app for users, I don't necessarily like to use terms like parameters in a user-facing way. As a programmer, we have a pretty good understanding of like what a parameter is. It's something where you put in a value, basically. But for the user, people might not find that to be the most intuitive term. So I might try to think about something else to call that. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as parameters. And then within that, we're going to have a each loop. Each param in all parameters. And for each of those, we're going to have a field. And it's going to have a control. And within that, there's going to be let's just copy this, a label, and then an input. And again, we need to put probably .input on this. And let's see, so the name here is going to be param.id. And the same thing here, param.id. And the same thing here. And then this would be param.name. Something like that, I think. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, well, it worked, but it's obviously got the wrong classes on it. Let's try taking off this input class for a moment. And we can see now it looks normal, but we want to find the Bulma checkbox class. There must be something for that. Checkbox, label class checkbox, and that's it. We already have our label class checkbox. We could do this div class checkbox as element though. Not sure exactly what that will do. Just put some, okay. And then label class checkbox. I wonder if it should not be inside a control. Doesn't seem like it really matters. Well, that's fine for now. I don't really like how it looks. And it's also not aligned with the parameters thing. Let's see. Horizontal form. And then like for this department, it's not a checkbox. Already a member. I mean, so we've got our field body, we've got our field. We've got our control. I wonder if I need that is narrow class on here. Kind of just trying to make it. Didn't really help. What's going on here? Checkboxes, field. So one thing is this control actually includes the field in it, apparently. What if we do it like that? Still not really. What I want. What if I get rid of that? And then do this. No, not really helping. Okay. Well, let's just leave that as we had it before. We can just have our dot control. And not super happy with that, but we can always style it a bit ourselves later if we want to. And then we can get rid of all these other fields. And, you know, kind of the idea here is this all parameters thing, if you recall from last time, is something that we pass into our view bag, which is set up here in this middleware. So for every view, there's going to be this all parameters array. And so that's why we actually have that available here without needing to add a new parameter into our view, because that's already being sent in for every view. And the reason we can do that is because that value is something that's basically hard-coded. It's not dependent on any properties of the view itself. It's the same everywhere. So we can just pass it in the same everywhere. Okie doke. And so here then we would have another horizontal field, I think. And then a control. And inside that a button. What does that look like? Yeah. Okie doke. So again, not a huge fan of that, but we can work on that later. The other thing I want to do is take that delete button. And because that's kind of different from the rest of the form, I'm going to put it into like a call out, which I'm not sure what exactly that's called in Bulma terms. A message? Not really. Not really a card. A box? I mean, it's kind of like a box. Usually it would be a box with a color, though. I wonder if we even have the kind of thing that I'm thinking about here. Let's see. Okay. I mean, we could just use something like this, actually, maybe. Let's try that. So it's a bit odd because we're not really making a notification here. But it's it looks like what we want it to look like. Notification. And this would be like is danger, is light. And then let's just see what this looks like. Right, so that's got a nice red border to it. And then within that, we're going to do a, might as well just do another horizontal field. And then another, oops, dot control. That needs to be a plus. And then within that, our input dot button. Yeah. And we need some text in there as well. So this horizontal field needs a label like delete this exercise, or just delete exercise. Okie doke. And this button, I think we can style it a bit differently here as well. Yeah, like that. And we could also put like a little bit of text in here where it's something along the lines of like h1 dot subtitle danger zone. Sure. Kind of the idea here is just to highlight that this delete button is going to do something irretrievable. Now, sometimes, you know, in our app, it's common to have a pattern where when you click a delete button, a modal dialog pops up to confirm that the user actually wants to do that action. And in general, whenever you're doing an action where it can't be undone, and, you know, it would be removing data, it's common to have that kind of delete button, or a delete modal, I mean. So like another example, if we go to the today page, if we add a new set here, we've got this X button here. And if I click that, it just immediately deletes the set without prompting to confirm that that's what I want. So, if I wanted to minimize the risk of users actually accidentally deleting their data, you could have a modal come up where, in case somebody just sort of fat fingered, they meant to click the drop down, but they accidentally clicked the X, especially on a mobile app when they're using their thumb. It can be pretty easy to do that. We don't want to accidentally delete their data. One other thing, though, that can be a good option and, is sort of a pattern that Google uses a lot in their apps, I've noticed, is you can delete it with one click, but also have the ability for the user to undo that. So the problem with the modal is that if a user is deleting a bunch of things at once, or, if they know what they're doing, it's an extra click they have to go through. It can be kind of annoying. Whereas just deleting it right away and then having the ability to undo that is in theory kind of the best of both worlds. It does come with some problems though. Like the way Google does it, often there'll be like a little pop-up where it's like, your thing has been deleted, undo. And it's like, if you don't click that undo button in like 5 seconds, the pop-up goes away and then there's no way to undo it. So, as a user, you kind of have to be attentive to those things. But I'm not going to worry about any of that quite yet for this. Just going to have the delete functionality clearly marked. And then, if the user clicks it, ultimately like these exercises, the problem with deleting an exercise is you're also deleting all of the set data associated with it. Whereas if you're deleting a single set, it's like ultimately that's not that hard to recreate. The biggest problem would be if you like can't remember the exact numbers. So having said that, actually, maybe we could just make a little modal here. So like if we go to manage an exercise, we could add some modal functionality to this, like a confirmation. And I kind of want to try making that into a mix-in as well. So let's actually do that here. Let's say let's build it and then we can convert it into a mix-in once we know what we're doing. So first of all, this submit, like this button is actually just going to be a button. It's not going to be an input. And it's not going to be type submit. And because it's a button, we need that to actually be out here like that. And then what this is going to do is we can use a data on click or on press, right? I don't really know. Let's just go with data on click. Sometimes you need to use the on press in order to catch touch events as well. I'm not sure if that's true for the data star library or not. So data on click, and what we're going to do here is toggle showing a modal dialog. So it would be like show or like delete modal equals true. And then we're also going to want a default signal for that modal. So it would be like data signals delete modal equals false. And then we're going to have another thing where it's going to be shown when that modal or when that value is true or false. So let's actually just start with a simple div here. And that would be like data show delete modal. And in here, we would just say like example text. And let's see what happens now. So if I click this, well, I don't really know what just happened. It's like it's doing, is it doing the form still? Click. Yeah, it's doing the form still, I guess because it's inside that form. So let's actually just take it out of there. That's going to go into the delete modal anyway. Okie doke. So now if we open this up again, what's going on here? Okay. Looks different now for some reason. I guess, well, yeah, that's probably why. Okie doke. So now if I delete, it just shows the delete dialog. And then in the delete dialog, we're going to actually have to, first of all, so let's see if Bulma has a modal type of thing. Usually they do, yeah. And kind of the idea with a modal component usually is there's an element that's displayed in the center of the page. And also the background is grayed out, as you can see here. And there's a close, typically clicking on the close button or clicking anywhere on the background will get rid of the modal. And so, this would be something like this. So there's modal and then modal background and then modal content. So this would be like div.modal. And then inside there would be .modal background and then .modal content. And the background, usually you don't need to put anything in there because that's just rendering that gray stuff, that gray background. So it just fills the whole page and has a background color and an on-click handler, and that's it. And then the content is where you actually put the content, which, is going to be our form. And then we could also have that modal delete thing, modal delete or modal close. And that's a button. Button.modal close dot is large. And aria label close, fine. And, we're going to need to actually wire this functionality for this button up ourselves as well. So like we say, like data on click, delete modal equals false. And we need to wire the same thing up onto the background, I believe. Okay. So now if we click this, it should be popping up a modal. This might need to be more like this. Oh, right. So I think I know what's going on here. That the modal needs the isActive modifier on the modal container. So we're not going to use data show. We're going to use data class, right? Data class. Yeah, something like this. Data class is active equals delete modal. Yeah, is active. Okay, so now we refresh the page, do our delete, and so the background came up, which is good. If I click the background, it goes away, which is good. If I click the X, it goes away, which is also good. The form, the actual content, for some reason isn't showing up though. Don't know what's up with that. Let's see, modal content. Oh, it is showing up. It's just showing up really weird. Okay. And then in that modal content, we're going to want something like this, a card, probably. So like we could have, so this is div modal card. Instead of modal content, modal card. And then inside that we have a header header.modal title dot, or no, modal card head. And then inside that we have a p.modal card title, which would be delete exercise. And then there's this close button, button dot delete. And this one is the same thing as this. And in fact, I think we can get rid of this one altogether. And then we also need a section dot.modal card body. And this would just be like, are you sure you want to delete this exercise and all associated historical data permanently? This cannot be undone. And then we can have a footer, modal card foot. And then in here, there would be buttons. And we would have like an OK and a cancel button. So button dot is success. Actually, we would call this dot is danger probably. And this would be like delete. And then we would have another button dot button cancel. Let's see what that looks like. Okie doke. So here the user is getting this option to delete an exercise. I don't know why this text is like, oh, I do know why, because that's inside. So like, let's take this modal out of the notification. Because the modal, you know, it doesn't have to be located directly alongside the actual element. I kind of wanted it to be so that we could use mixin to define that easily enough, but it's not necessary. Why is this so slow now? What's going on here? I might as well respond to this little warning I noticed. But I don't think that's the problem. Only named blocks and mixins can appear at the top level of an extending template. Okay, so what that's telling me is this, it should be inside this block content. Fine. Delete. Yeah. Looking good. And really what we could do tier 2 is actually have a block modal. And this would just be, this could actually be directly underneath the HTML, like underneath the body, I guess. And I think that that will work. And I don't think that's a problem if things don't define that block. Yeah, okay, still fine. So then we can put this modal into that block. And kind of the result of that is it's not going to be affected by the styling of any parent components at all. Like so. Delete. Okay. And then you can just, you know, click delete and nothing will happen. Or you can click cancel and nothing will happen. You can click the X and the thing will go away. So now we need to actually implement these two buttons here. And obviously the cancel one is just closing the modal. The delete one is actually going to be submitting the form, which I'm realizing now. I deleted my form. Let's look over here at the history so we can just copy that again. This is the form. And I could just put that in this section here. And the ID could be like delete exercise. And the name too. Okay. And then this would be like an input type submit value delete. Let's see, how does this look? Looks fine still. And then we need to set, I think, form delete exercise, like that. Okay, so now if we look at the network tab, if we delete this jogging exercise, it submits that form. You know, exercise 16 delete does a post, and then that redirects us back to the list of all exercises page. So now, you know, if the user accidentally clicks delete, they're prompted with this thing where they can cancel if they want to. And this same modal functionality we could also include in other places. Part of the problem here is, like, say we wanted to make a mixin for this, right? You could have a mixin for the modal as a whole, which might not be a bad idea. And you can have a mixin for the button. But because they're located in different parts of the DOM tree, you can't really have a mixin for both. And like using React, and by which I mean a mixin that handles both at once. Using React libraries, there's sometimes like a special type of component called a portal, where by rendering the portal component with some content in it, that content is rendered not in the location of the actual portal component on the DOM tree, but in, just like we have this modal block right underneath the body, it would be someplace like right underneath the body or some other place in the DOM tree. And so with that way, you can actually have a single component that's defining both the button to open the modal and the modal itself, but even though they're in totally different parts of the actual DOM tree. So that's kind of a useful trick, but I don't think there's a good way to do that with Pug. And it's not really that big of a deal anyway. So for now, we're just going to leave this not as a mixin, and we can deal with that later if we want to, if we start to have a bunch of mixins all over the place. Okie doke. So I still don't like these checkboxes. That's kind of the last thing that I want to fix up on this page. So one of the things that I don't like about it is there's not spacing between the input and the text of the label. Like, so we've got our label class checkbox. And we've got this, and then we've got the text reps. And like, I want there to be more of a space between those. The other thing is it's not horizontally aligned or vertically aligned, I mean, with the parameters. So it doesn't look like it's, you know, it just doesn't look polished that way. And I'm a bit confused because, like, if I look at this, there is a spacing there, and I'm like, where is that spacing coming from? Oh, so they actually just put it right in the text. That's kind of cheating a little bit, but that's okay. Like, an example of that would be like if I did this, then the spacing is there. Kind of cheating, but that's okay. And then the other aspect is the actual horizontal field is not aligned. And that's kind of similar to like this already a member thing. Let's see here. So like here you can see it's aligned, and I'm not sure exactly why. Let's take a look at what we've got going on here. So field label, field body. Here we've got field body, checkboxes. This is not going to have that presumably. It just has field is narrow, control. And then there's label radio and another label radio. It's a bit confusing. Let's get rid of this actually. What if we put the field up here? And we get rid of the checkboxes. And we do it like that. That's not really what we want to see. Beneath that, this is like beneath that there's a control. And then too much indentation. Yeah, it's not really helping at all. Okay. Let's go back to how we had it. So probably what I'm just going to do here is say, like, if you're inside a field body and you're rendering a label with a class of checkbox, there should be some margin on that or something like that. So we should be able to do that with a little bit of custom CSS here. And hopefully it won't affect things that we don't want it to. So like field body, and then inside that, it's like a label dot checkbox. Then we're going to say, let's say like margin, auto, 0. And that didn't really work. But kind of the idea there is like we're setting the top and the bottom to auto, which is right, but it's not taking up the full space. What if we did like dot checkboxes dot control? So here the field, so the field is the right height. The control is too short. Now the control is the right height. And then if we did what's the thing for like, I'm trying to remember for Flexbox, there's a way to basically vertically center the content. I think it's sort of like you would have like flex. Like this label would be like dot is flex dot is flex direction row. And is flex wrap, no wrap. And I think it's align content center. It's either align content or justify content. I can never remember which. Okay, so that didn't quite, so let's see what we've got going on here. So the label, maybe all this stuff actually needs to go on the thing above it. So let's do like an actual dot field and then dot control with all that stuff. Checkbox stays down here, of course. Then, well, that did something. Not what I expected, though. So here the field body, it's got all these checkboxes. Why are they so far down now? Flex. So actually one of the interesting things here, like let's undo what we just did. And refresh. Okay, so this actual checkboxes thing here is already flex, right? Computed display flex. Yeah. So this is already flex. And so I wonder if we could have something where it's like align content or align items center. Is that not it? Is it justify content center? No. Justify item center? No. Align content center? I'm pretty sure there's some way of doing this, right? Well, okay, so for starters, actually, like if I go to one of these fields, one of these controls, and get rid of this, that works. And then let's see which of these is actually doing the thing I want. It's not align content. It's not justify items. It's not justify content. So I was right the first time. It's align item center. Okay. So I'm just going to put a style here. Style align items center. And then we also need to get rid of that other attempt at solving the problem. Okay, so now they're center aligned and looking not too bad. If I switch this to mobile view, for some reason, the intensity one's off. That looks weird. The others are fine though. It also has a different color on some of them. Oh, I see. That just went away. So why is this one different? There's something about field not last child. So the problem here is that the form is now thinking that these should be vertically aligned. Like if I get rid of this class, this is what it's kind of thinking they're going to look like. And then if I switch it back to this view, I don't know. It's kind of irritating. Let's actually get rid of that checkboxes thing altogether and see what it looks like responsively. So now it's, you know, they're spread out. They're still not aligned properly. If I do this, they're switched back into that, which is really what we want to see. So this works well in the mobile view, but not so much in the non-mobile view. So really, and like if we look, so field body, this is also flex. If I do align item center on this, They are center aligned there, which is nice. Better aligned with the parameters. Still not 100% aligned though, for some reason. But it's closer, right? It looks okay. And really the spacing there is not that big of a deal. So I'm probably just going to do that. The problem there is the field body is part of this horizontal field mixin. One sec. Got a person to ban here. Okie doke. Okay, so anyway, the problem is that the field is part of this mixin. So probably the simplest solution there is to actually, well, actually, let's take a look at something here. So pug mixin. There's this thing of attributes, mixin attributes, which is taken from the attributes passed to the mixin. So like if I do parameters and then do like class equals, or say style equals, well, let's do class because there is a Bulma class for this. For align items is align item center. And so then like just doing that, it's not going to apply. But if I do this, in that mixin, I think that might kind of work. Let's see what this does. Refresh. Okay, yeah. So that class is actually now applied to that thing. Now, kind of one of the problems here is like with the mixin, there's only one place to define attributes, right? Like there's only one element. But then inside the actual mixin, there's a bunch of elements. So in this case, we've chosen to apply those attributes to this field body because that's what I need in this particular case. But depending on what somebody's trying to do, like maybe they want to customize the classes on the top level field or the label. And, you know, we need to figure out something else then. But for now, this will work. You know, and if enough of that stuff needs customizing, then ultimately it's probably best to split that mixin into multiple smaller, more granular mixins because it's indicating that it's not actually a reusable piece of logic if we're needing to customize it to that degree. Anyway, so we've got our parameters here. If we switch back to mobile view, works fine. If we click delete in mobile view, that also works well. That's nice to see. Okay, so let's go ahead and commit these changes for now. So updating exercise page. And yeah, that's just a random. I'll do that separately. Update exercise edit page to use Bulma form stuff. Sure. And then this I'm just going to commit as like fix warning about send versus send status. And if I do like look for any instances of .send, got rid of them all. I mean, so there's those, but those are proper. You use send status when you're trying to send a status with no body. And you use send when you're trying to send the body, like you would use .status, .send. Anyway, let's commit that. Okay, so now this page is up to snuff, more or less. The next one to work on is going to be, this page. the data view page. So in order to do this, let's actually generate some data. So let's look at this everything thing here. And like we'll do, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, medium. And so now, and let's just add another one. 3, 2, 1. High. So now if we go to manage exercises and click on everything here, we see those 2 data points. There's also some from earlier, the 22nd. And we can see a table of the historical sets for this. And one of the things we notice is that this table is not actually rendering properly. We've got a bit of a problem here. And the problem, this is something that we already knew. So I actually have a note about it in my notes. We need to update the table to work for unitized parameters. So let's go ahead and do that now. This is in the historical thing here. So the problem is for each of these parameters, what we're embedding is the parameter value, which was previously just a number or a string. But now that value can actually be an object with units in it. And this is something that we addressed a little bit as well in the over here, the chart rendering logic. And so we can kind of use something similar here where check if the parameter has a value property, if it does use that. Otherwise use the minutes property, otherwise just use the parameter itself. And we can use that same logic for here in the table. So, where is that? Historical. So this would be like, we could actually make a shorthand here. Which, how do we do that again? Oh yeah, with a dash. To basically, I want to define a variable. Var param value equals that. And so here we would be like param value dot value, or I don't know if we can use question marks. Let's try that though. Param value dot minutes, or param value just plain old. And so now if we do that, yeah, we get an error because it doesn't like this. So, what we could do is just use ORs. The problem with just using ORs is if somebody's param value is actually 0, that's considered falsy. And so it's not going to render the way that we expect. For some reason, this isn't working for the one on the 15th. Not sure why that is. Can we see that data here somewhere? Probably not. Well, let's actually just log that out. I kind of want to see what that old piece of data is. So for exercises, ID historical, console.log, historical sets. Refresh. And of course, it's not actually showing me that. What it is, it's just showing me an object. So I'm going to need to JSON stringify it. There are other ways to get around that, but this way it's like you can just see the full structure. And if we look for the ones where it's the very first, it should be on the 15th. And here, so this is kind of a good example where it's like we have values Yeah, let's try this. Can I define a function? Just to start with, return false, otherwise return v. And then it would be like this. I just kind of want to see if this function, if this actually works here, or if we're going to get an error. Okay, that does work. And then the same thing here. And then the same thing here. And so what we're actually going to want to do is if v equals 0 or v equals empty string, because these are values that are present but falsy, we're actually going to return v still. And so now I mean, it should be rendering those. Oh yeah, the console log not really going to work. Let's get rid of that. So let's take a look up here again. So the one from the 15th, there's reps, which is an empty string. And so that one should be returning an empty string. So that's right. There's wait, which has a value, which is an empty string. So that should be doing that. Right. So we kind of need to do, this is sort of annoying. Let's do like equals false, param value. Otherwise, if parameter minutes is not empty, then param value dot minutes. Otherwise, just param value. And then here this could actually just return like this could be has value, and that could be return true, return false, return true. And then this would be if it has a value. And we don't need the equals, triple equals anymore. We're kind of trying to work around the fact that with JavaScript, it's like if you're just checking if something is true or falsy, it's going to return, it's going to treat empty strings and zeros as being falsy as well. So we can't just chain the actual parameter value here. We basically have to coerce it to a Boolean using our rules about how we want to do that. So we're saying if parameter.value has a value according to this logic, then use that. Otherwise, if minutes has a value, then use that. Otherwise, just use the value. And the logic is if it's 0 or empty, it has a value. Otherwise, if it's falsy, and like we could just do like return, not v. Okay, so that works. And for these, we're getting empty strings because that's what's stored in the data set. But at least we're not getting like object lines. And we can be confident that if a user actually deliberately is storing a value of 0, that's going to render properly. Okay, let's do a quick, let's get rid of that. A quick commit of this. So like update historical table to render unitized values. And we can check that off of our notes. Okay, but you know, there's still a lot of other improvements we want to make here, basically. One of the things is we want this to include the units in the table. So like here, we could have like var unit equals default unit. How do we use default unit again? Default unit parameter.data type and user. And then we would need to make sure to remember to convert that value similar to how we do in the today page here with like a convert unit thing. And really this param value should actually be that probably. And this param value, I'm just going to call param data instead. And, you know, you could argue you're putting too much data in the view, too much logic in the view, I mean. And, you know, you could be right about that. This would be param value and param data. Well, that's not really right though, is it? So let's say like unit equals, if param value has a unit, then it'll be that. Otherwise, if param value dot minutes, then it'll be min. Otherwise, it'll be nothing. And, you know, maybe I'll put a space in there actually too. Space plus. And then converted value is like param value dot unit. Otherwise, just param value. And I guess this needs to be param data dot unit, param data dot unit, and param data. And then this here is just going to be param value plus unit, I guess. Kind of confusing. Let's see if that, well, it's not going to work because we have to send some more imports in. Like it's complaining default unit is not a function. So like in some of these, like let's look in here for default unit. So this is something that we're passing into certain, probably just this today view, these functions. And actually I want to take those out of here and put them into our view bag so that they're going to be in every page. Because again, these functions are just global functions or whatever, you know, they're not changing based on the view. And so now, you know, we've got weight, kilograms, reps, just a number, assisted, distance, kilometers, duration, minutes, and intensity. So it looks like that rendering logic is working correctly. These empty values, you know, it does look kind of weird. But I don't think that really should be a thing that happens. too much anyway, so maybe we don't need to worry about that. One thing I could say is like, if param value is an empty string, then render 0. Otherwise, render param value. Maybe that'll look a little better. Yeah. Oh, and then that needs to be in parentheses. Yeah, okay. And I mean, maybe that could actually even be like none. Something really explicitly. And we could actually get rid of that. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so that's not bad. It's like none. The units aren't there because there is no unit for a 0 or for a nothing. And then there are also some things where it's like 0, which is fine. And really, maybe that should even be just empty. How does that look? Yeah, that's not bad. Got rid of the units because just having it say blank kilometers doesn't make sense. But if we just keep it totally blank, that makes pretty good sense. Okay. Anyway, kind of messing with the table a little bit here. Then we've got these charts. And the charts are kind of a pain because I'm not exactly sure what I want to do with them. But one thing is for sure, they probably should be organized differently. Like they need to be a little smaller. They need to have a title. I kind of feel like I want each chart to be inside some kind of container. I just don't know exactly what that would look like. Like I almost want to use like a columns thing here. Like if we had 3 columns, div, or just do dot columns, and sizes. You know, we could do almost like, this would be like div, or just do dot is half. Let's see what that's like here. Just kind of curious. Oh, and that needs to be underneath. Okay, so we have 4 columns. It's interesting because there is half, but they're definitely taking up quarter instead of half. And in fact, they're going straight off the page, which is a bit not ideal. What is going on with that? Columns. So the columns, do they not wrap? If they don't wrap, then really what we want instead is more of the grid situation. So I think we would want a fixed grid. Fixed grid, grid, and then each of these would be like cell. And the fixed grid would have, let's try 2 columns. Okay, yeah, so now we have more effective use of space. If I switch this to 3 columns, they're starting to feel a little small, but that's actually not too bad. And then if I mobile view it, though, they're like super small. So we need to handle the mobile view. Like in mobile, it's just going to be 1 column. So we're going to do like has one calls mobile and maybe has two calls tablet, and then has three calls desktop, say. So now we've got our three columns. At a certain point, it switches to two columns. And then at a certain point, it switches to one column. And if we do the mobile view, it looks okay. I mean, we still have some stuff to do, obviously, but it's making sense. And for each of these, like one of the things is, we have this label here, but I feel like we kind of can just actually put each of these into like a little box. Like if I use this box thing, dot box, what does that look like? Yeah, so now they're kind of more visible as separate components of the UI or whatever, separate things. And inside each of these boxes, I kind of want to have something like a subtitle. I wonder what that, and that would be like param.name. Is that going to look weird? It's not bad. I wonder, what if I do a title? Is that going to be huge? Yeah. I don't hate that though, actually. And, could center align that. And then we could, in the actual table, we could get rid of that like assisted thing. I don't know the best way to do that though. So that would be chart.js is what we're using for this, if I recall. Docs. We're probably going to want some kind of option for this chart. Legend, I think. So it would be like options, plugins, legend, display false, like that. Yeah, okay. Gets rid of the legend, making it a little bit cleaner. And, there's a lot of other things we could do. So like one of the problems with these two is that the x-axis here is the date, basically, kind of. The label on the x-axis is the date, but the actual x-axis is just like the set number, if that makes sense. So what I would really like is for the x-axis to have like one, to have like each date be a thing, but then not necessarily have a data point on it if somebody didn't do any exercises on that date. I don't really know the terminology there. Let's see though, if we go to axes, type. I see this one has type time. Is that like a thing? Option scale. X. Type time. It's not happy with that. labels. Data sets. Data sets.map. So the data is the value, the label. What if I do type line and just kind of want to see if that works again? Nope. Data sets, data. Range settings. Linear. Let's try this. Linear. Okay. So that does kind of work, but so we want that to be time. And then somehow we want that time Cartesian. Available adapters. Jeez. It's kind of complicated, but I guess maybe that's just how it's going to be because times are complicated. And then input data. So this actually should work. I think we just need to set up these time adapters. So, I guess we would use a Luxon adapter. I like Luxon. Okay. I think we already have Luxon as a dependency. No, doesn't look like it. Okay, so let's do that. Bun install Luxon and chart.js adapter Luxon. And then in this file, we need to import that as well. And then now what's happening? Nothing because I need to restart the server, right? And just to be sure, I'm going to restart this bundler as well, just in case it's, something. Okay, so that did work. And this is actually looking a lot better now in a way because we have the proper space between the things in the past. And when the two things are on the same day, we actually have that, like they're on top of each other, they're vertical. So it's a little weird looking, but it's maybe a more easy to read representation. Also, like say I go back a day and I add and everything, and this maybe, 1, 2, 2. And then I go back to that exercise. And we can see like that showing up there. I'm kind of curious. So say I go back to today, yesterday, and add another set for that. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And say, set that to high, just out of curiosity. I kind of want to see what it looks like. So here, there's two, you can't even really tell, but there's actually two things there. And then it goes to the next day. So there's probably going to be kind of like a zigzag pattern almost when people are doing this with realistic data, because it's like you have 3 sets on a given day with steadily increasing values. And then on the next day or the next session for that exercise, it's going to go kind of back down. But at least this is kind of rendering that in a way that makes sense. And I like that it has like 1 tick on the axis per day. That seems like a pretty good way to do it, at least for this range of data. And, maybe if I added a bunch of data in the distant past, it would, handle those ticks differently as well. Like maybe it'll be 1 tick per month or something, which might be a bit odd, but at least it's not terrible. Okay, so one of the things here, like this, there's something going on where it's getting chopped off, which isn't good. Has 1 calls mobile, has 2 calls tablet, has 3 calls desktop. So like if I look at the grid, fixed grid, so desktop is 1024 up. So if I switch this down, kind of go down to 1024 width, it actually slightly higher than that. I guess it has to do with the way that the container element works. But anyway, that seems okay. But then I almost want this to be has 3 calls widescreen instead. Let's see what that does. So now it has 3 columns. As I shrink it down, it switches to 2 columns at a certain point. And then as I continue to shrink it down, it does something. What is going on here? Reps weight assisted distance. Yeah. 1 call mobile. 2 calls tablet. So like, what is going on here right now? We've got our grid. Its width is 811. And so that should be greater than tablet. So it has 2 calls. I guess that makes sense. I kind of want to change that to desktop. Why is it? It's like it's not, I don't know. It's not doing something right. Okay, so let's refresh this. We get 3 columns. If we go down to this, we get 2 columns. That seemed okay. See, if we keep going a little bit further here, though, we get this weirdness. If I refresh, it's fine, actually. It might have something to do with the canvas themselves not liking the page resizing. It actually seems to work as long as I keep refreshing. So it's okay. Just don't expect it to dynamically resize too much if you're resizing the page, which is not common. So I think that's okay. Anyway, let's do like, let's do it the other way around actually. We could do like history of the exercise name. History of everything. Now that sounds like the name of a book that somebody probably wrote. Okay. And then the table here, I just want that to be in the center ideally, but it's kind of okay the way it is too. It's not really that big of a deal. So one of the other things I want to do on this page though is also have the ability to pick our time range as a user. So let's look at the historical page. So we have this thing where we're getting sets for the given exercise, and we're getting it from everything in the past year, past 365 days. Now, that works. If I change this to say the past 7 days, then these like the 15 and 22 are going to go away, presumably. Or the 15 one is, I guess. 22 is exactly a week ago, I guess. So that makes sense. And so, you know, but this number is hard coded in here, and we basically want users to be able to control this a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say like const look back equals parse int rec.query dot look back, or 265, let's just say. Okie doke. What are you complaining about here? So it's kind of annoying. Type of rec.query to look back equals string, then parse int. Oops. Otherwise, negative 365, or just 365. And this would be like negative. Can you do like just negative look back? Feels like that shouldn't work, but maybe that does work. I don't know. Okay, let's refresh here. So now we're back to a year. And then if I do like look back equals 4, it's going to filter out the ones that are not in that window. Okay. So now we have the ability to specify that. Now we just need to provide a little bit of a UI for that. And, you know, there's a few, like actually picking a look back window can be kind of complicated. If you think about something like Grafana or, you know, some other like Datadog, whatever, some like anything where you're looking back through historical data, a lot of times they'll have basically two options. There's like a relative look back where you can pick like 1 day ago, 7 days ago, 30 minutes ago, a year ago. And then there's also an absolute look back where you can say everything after this date, such and such a specific date or time. And you can do it a lot of times with like a little string where you can do like minus 30D and just type it in, or there'll be like a little thing that you can, you know, pick from a dropdown from common values. It's a complicated thing to support like the full set of features of look back for people. So what we might do instead is just provide some common values in a select, at least for now, is kind of what I'm thinking. So, I mean, the other option is we could have a modal where it's like pick look back and then it pops up a little box where you can pick it. Let's see here. I'm going to see actually if there's a convenient way to do that. I would want like a popover type of thing. I guess drop down, maybe. Like you would do drop down, and then in there would be some options. Okay, let's do this. So we would have kind of up at the top of the page here for now, looks like there's a top level div with dot drop down. And I'll just say data class is active equals show look back picker. And I'll get rid of the show. I kind of try to avoid that when I'm naming my signals. And then like data signals look back picker equals false to start with. And then there would be a drop down trigger, which inside there is a button. And that has these things. The ARIA things, you know, I'm just kind of copying those from Bulma. Ultimately, that's used for like screen readers and other types of accessibility tools. And then span date look back. I'll have something else in there, but for now I'm just doing that. And then we would have this little icon, which it looks like this is actually just a plain old icon, and that's using the Font Awesome icon, which we don't use Font Awesome. We do have an icon mix-in, and so that's what we're going to use. It would be like plus icon something. And let's look at Tabler icons, see what icons we have available here. We want a drop down. Yeah, something like this, I guess. Although that's a little bit too, kind of prefer this chevron. Like this, yeah, chevron down. Okay, so now we have that drop down. And thinking about it, maybe that'll look best if we actually put it in the title. And just float it to the right. You know, not bad, right? And then kind of the idea there, see, when I do this back and forth, it's messing up all of the canvas sizing, but that's okay. So then we need to actually include the menu part. Oh, that's interesting. The ARIA controls is like tied to the ID of the menu, it looks like. Anyway, so the menu is a sibling of the trigger. drop down menu, and it would be drop down, or let's call it look back picker. And that's the same thing we would have up here, look back picker. And then role menu. And underneath that, we would have dot drop down content. And then we'd have some drop down items, and these would be like buttons basically. Let's just start with one button dot drop down item. And this would be like minus, or let's just call it 1 year. And then we would have like a couple others. So like 7 days, 30 days, 1 year, whatever. And so now, like when I click this, I need it to actually be adjusting this data signal. So like this button would have a data on click equals look back picker equals true. Or really we could be like equals not look back picker. So it inverts the current value. So I can click it to open it, click it again to close it. And then the idea is I could also have like a drop-down item in here that's actually an input. And actually this would be like a control. And we could do something like that. And then in the control mixin, we would need to do this attributes thing again, like we have there. It would be right on that thing. And so then inside the control mixin, we would actually have like an input. And let's just start there for now and see what that looks like. So click look back. So yeah, so we have the option to pick one of our 3 values, or we have like this input here. And does this have something specific to say about that? Not really. Okay. And then the input, we would have something like data on input. And, we're kind of doing something like the today page here. So let's actually take a look at that. So like we have data on input. And really, this is actually going to be on change. And because we don't want it to be changing immediately as soon as the user starts to type, only when they deselect it. Data on change. Window.location.query equals trying to think of the easiest way to do this. I guess for now we could just do equals, I believe it's evt.target.value. So this would be like equals question mark, look back, equals evt.target.value, something like that. Yes, let's see what that does. Refresh. So now if I set this to 1, 2, 3 and then click away, it's not It's not doing what I was hoping it to do. I think that should work, right? Window.location. Let's see. Can I assign? Oh, it's called .search, not .query. And it includes the question mark automatically. Okay, so now if I set this to 1, 2, 3 and then click away, it still didn't do the thing. Clicked. It's not actually clicked, of course, but let's see if that logs something. It does. So then when I assign window.location.search, why is that not working? Okay, it is working. But one problem is this needs to be like that. So if I set this to 1, 2, 3, that works. If I set this to 12, that works. If I set this to like ASDF, then it's, it's not going to work. We're getting a crash here. Which is fine. So by switching this to a number, it's like I'm actually trying to type letters in it and it's not working. And I could set like min equals 0. There's no real max here. The step is 1. That's fine. So now, like if I tried to set this to like negative 100, that actually did work. I'm surprised. Let's refresh here. I thought if it had min, it's not going to let you set a value less than that. Min 0, negative 1, 3. I guess it doesn't care. But that's okay. One of the things that I'm going to need to add to this, by the way, before I really fully deploy it, is parameter validation on the server side. And that's something I've kind of been avoiding doing, but eventually we're going to need to have better validation of these parameters that we're reading, either from like the URL segment or like the query or things that are being sent in the body. They should be being validated against some kind of a schema. So I'm going to be adding that at some point, but I'm not worried about that quite yet. Let me make sure that I have that in notes here. I'll add it just in case. Validate server side parameters, or validate parameters server side, e.g. with Zod is a library that I like to use for that. But anyway, so now users can pick their look back. And kind of my idea here is if I like search for clock. So like this one would have in this control, like the left thing would be clock. And now it's got that. And I could also have the right thing being like days. And that, you know, there is no icon for that. If I recall, for the icons, like for right icon, I'll just do this. Why is it all bold? That's weird. Like if I look over here, these are not like that. But if I go back here, oh, maybe it's because it's inside the title. Ugh. Okay. That's fine though. Let's take it out of the title. Because it's floated, it doesn't actually need to be in the title. It can just be defined before it here. And now that should, yeah, look fine. So here, the idea is the user can enter a specific number of days in the past, or they can pick one of these predefined values. And these values are, you know, we need to actually implement those as well. So this would be, you know, something kind of similar to this. Data on click, location.search, look back equals 7. And we would do the same thing here. Look back equals 30. And look back equals 365. And then we could have another one maybe that's like infinity. And this could be all time. I don't know if that's going to work though. I'm kind of curious. All time. It did not work. So the issue is that it's trying to convert that infinity into a date, and that's not possible, really. We can deal with that later. Let's get rid of that. I might add that as a to-do as well, actually. Support all time look back. Okie doke. And kind of the idea there is like we have this get sets for exercises thing, and it's checking this based on the starting date. So what we could do is if the starting date is optional, we could have like starting date starting date, that, otherwise undefined. Don't really know how that's going to work, but it might work. So then we could re-include this, and this could be like all time. Or we could just call it all. And then over here, we would need to have something where it's like rec.query.lookback equals all, then it would be all, just all, I guess. And so then down here, we would have something where it's like look back equals all undefined, otherwise that. Let's see how this is going to work now. So first, get rid of the look back. Okay, so then we can say like look back 7 days, That works. Look back all time. It also works. Cool. Okay. Probably time to make a commit or two. Let's first let's commit these changes here. So one of the changes I want to commit is this range and this range. Move default unit and convert unit into view bag. Okey-doke. Another one here is going to be install Luxon chart.js adapter Luxon and use in and import adapter. Sure. Okey-doke. And then here we're going to have a thing for support variable look back in historical page, historical data page, let's say. And then we would have a thing where it's kind of just update UI of historical page. Okay. Okay, feeling not so bad. This table business so one of the things I'm thinking here, let's see, under exercises. So I guess just to explain what I'm thinking here, we've got these intensities. If I actually look at this thing here, it's a select and the option, there's like a value and there's a display. And let's look at the today page here. Find one of those selects for intensity. Yeah, like this business here. I kind of want to take this and actually expose this as another function. Similarly to how we have all parameters, all units, we would have like function all intensities. And it would just return, return an array of those things. Low, medium, high. And this we could also add to our view bag. All intensities. And we imported it. Yep. And I'll just get rid of that unused import. Okie doke. So now that we have that, first of all, we can use it in the today page. Like this, instead of this array, it would actually be all intensities. And if I search for like low, is there anything else that depends on that? No. Okay. And so that works for these. And now we can use that same logic in the historical page when we're actually rendering the display value of the thing. So like here, there would be like another thing where it's like param.data type intensity. I mean, this is turning into a real mess, but whatever. So if the param.data type is intensity, then we're going to do something. Otherwise, we're just going to return the param data. And that something here is going to be all intensities dot find intensity dot id equals param value dot name. And let's, get this to be a bit less nightmarish here. Just put them each of them on a new line. Why not? Might as well put a semicolon on these things as well. Our linter is not running on the pug files, so we don't get that in there automatically. And then if I go to manage exercises, everything, undefined is not an object. So that would be like this or empty object. Right? Yeah. But now we get undefined. We could do like or empty string there as well. So that's an empty string, but so, and we would expect that to be the case for maybe some place where there is no intensity, but when there is one, why is it not finding it? Intensities.find where ID equals param value. Let's log that. It's not logging. Why is it not logging anything? Let's just put something. Oh yeah, because I will be logging it on the server side. Kind of confusing. Okay, so we've got our param value. Why is it logging that even for things where the data type is not intensity? param. You can see that the all intensities value is correct, so let's just get rid of that. Refresh. So that seems fine. Why is it logging it so many times though? Oh, so first of all, this should be param data. Was that the problem? Yeah, that was the problem. Whoops. Okie doke. Got some confusing logic here. But, you know, really, like this should be... I should put this all into another function. Let's see. So export function, display string, parameter value, returning a string. And this guy, so the parameter value and might as well just have this as a separate function too. Export function is, maybe I won't export that for now, just call it is value v any Boolean. Okay, so here, now that we're actually in JavaScript, we can write this a little bit better. So we could say like, but now I have to convert it, which is going to be a pain in my butt. So if, and let's do parameter value and, or let's do parameter as parameter definition and value is parameter value. So it'll need both of those. And we could just do this better now, or we could say like if param dot data type equals distance, then return something. Like we would do return value dot value plus something unit equals default unit param.datatype user. So this is also going to need the user, I guess. User. It's kind of annoying, but whatever. And this would be value dot so this would be like value, you might as well say like value as distance dot value. This needs to be imported. Plus space. And really what we should do is probably something like this, like return value and then unit separately. And then the rendering thing can combine them if they want to, or it can just use the value or whatever. And so the unit here would be just unit, I guess. And the value is going to need to be converted with unit So it's going to be converted from this to unit. And that, we can assert for now. And this is going to return value string unit string. Or unit string. Right. Okie doke. And so then we could also do the same thing for our other data types in here as well. So like data type equals weight, or param.datatype equals, well, yeah, I guess that's fine, right? Number, weight, intensity, duration, yeah. And this would be as weight. And I believe this logic is exactly the same as the distance. And then we would also have if param.datatype equals duration. And maybe I should do this as like a switch case. Switch param.datatype case distance would be this. Case weight would be this. And really, yeah, well, that's fine. So then we have case duration, case intensity, and case number. And for the number, we would just return value is just the value, and the unit is undefined. Value as number. Right? What is the weight, intensity, duration, distance? So if I actually look at this parameter value definition, I feel like it's missing something here because we have number as a type, a data type, but that's not one of the options for the parameter value here. So this would just be like or number. Fine. So over here, value as number. Sure, just do toString on that. Intensity would be return value as intensity. But we don't actually want, so for intensity, we would have something where it's like this business. So const display equals all intensities. And again, well, here I'm actually just going to import and call it like this. Don't even need to import it. It's in the same file. All intensities.find, where this is value. And then this is dot name or empty string. And that would be the display. Okie doke. For duration, we would return value is value as duration dot minutes, and unit is min. And we could just what if I do that? Dot to string. Sure. Might as well make that optional as well, actually. Okie doke, let's get rid of all this. And so these guys are complaining about redeclaring a block scoped variable, which is annoying. If I just did this, I don't know exactly what variable they're having a problem with, but maybe each of the case statements isn't a different block, although I don't know, that seems kind of dumb, but maybe that's how it works. Okay, so with this, now it's like we've got this logic for displaying the value of the thing as a string. And then over here, we can actually get rid of all this and have something where it's like var display equals display string, and that would be param data, and user. And then all of this stuff we would comment out. And then this would be display dot value. If there is one, then you would do like display dot value plus display dot unit, otherwise just an empty thing. And here we could even do a thing where it's like display dot value and display dot unit. Well, let's see. Display dot value and let's actually just do it like this. Plus space plus display.unit. So with that, if we refresh this, got to put the display string in our view bag. Got to import that. Okay. Undefined is not an object. Exercises.ts, line 100. Line 100. That's a weird line number. But anyway, it's calling .toString on something Is that it? Undefined is not an object. Evaluating value.value. How could the value ever be? So like here, we're returning objects in every case. Oh, I see. It was value.value. So it's actually something like this. Also, we never even ended up using that isValue function. Let's get rid of that. And I wonder if we want to put something where it's like if not value and value not equals 0, return value. Just return an empty object. Let's see what that has to say for itself. I mean, it solved the error, but it's not rendering it properly at all now. Let's see here. Param data. So if we go in here and we say console log param value, refresh this. So the value here is always undefined. So, okay. This param data, that should be this. You know, that, I feel like that should be a compile error. I don't know why that was doing what it was doing, but I'm not a fan of it at all. Anyway, let's get rid of all that. And then I'm actually going to do something like this. So display.value and display.unit, then this. And I guess we don't need those parentheses. Otherwise, if display.value, then just that. Otherwise, empty string. Cool. So now those are rendering fine. And kind of the idea is we can use that same logic in other places. And it's, we got it out of the view. It's also a lot more robust because it's actually based on the parameter data types instead of sort of duck typing the value, which is how it worked before. Okay. Let's wrap up here. I just realized I'm a bit over time. Okay, so first of all, we've got our all intensities. In fact, let's just add all of this at once. So we've got all intensities and display string. We've got that, which is just a fix. We've got this. And this, and this. Okay. Okay, let's break it out into a couple commits, actually. So we've got all intensities, which I'm also going to stage this range, and I'm going to stage this range. And then in this file, I'm going to just stage this range, but it's going to stage that whole other, okay, no, that works. All intensities. And then right, that should be fine. So add all intensities function. And then here we're going to add display string function. Add display string function and use in historical page. And then last but not least, except it actually is probably least, is allow parameter value to be a plain number. Okay. So with that, we've made some progress. Help this page look a little bit better. Properly rendering the units and everything in this table, defining a reusable function for that. Updating this, this manage exercise page where you can edit the settings so that this works a little bit better, including modal functionality. And that's pretty much the main stuff. Okay. Well, anyway, with that, let's make we already made a commit. Let's push our commits. And I will see you all next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.